We've been closely following the legislative session at the Capitol. I spoke with Jim Engster earlier this week on the latest developments. Take a look. We're in week 3 of the legislative session. This year is a fiscal year, which means most of the bills will be focused on taxes and economics, things like that. But there are some proposals that focus on social issues. Here to discuss the current hot topics this week is political commentator Jim Engster. Thanks for joining us. So like I said, this is a fiscal year, so that's mainly what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start with this one bill, and it focuses on repealing the franchise tax by 2025. So Louisiana has already done some work with the franchise tax. We've reduced it to $275 for every $1,000 made, but this new bill would want to phase it out altogether. So do you think this bill is likely to pass? What are the pros and cons?
I'm not sure. I think some bills will pass. It could be this. The state has money, and lawmakers tend to do things they otherwise would not do when the state has some cash, and they never miss an opportunity to cut taxes if they can. But of course, every cut means at some point down the line, perhaps a pay or a tax increase, and nobody wants that. And we saw that happen once before when the SWI plan was shut down in 2008, and then immediately the state didn't have as much money coming in, and Bobby Jindal's administration ran into a problem and had to make significant cuts to balance the budget. So whether they want to repeat that process, I don't know, but any tax cut always has a chance with a conservative legislature.
So for this particular bill, it's estimated to lose about $1.57 billion. I mean, you've just explained that we could see a possible tax increase. Is that the only downside to this?
Yeah, I think that any cut of that magnitude has to be met with some sort of revenue enhancement elsewhere, because the state right now has money, residual money from COVID, and that will not always be the case. So what happens when that money goes away? There has to be a way to recoup those funds. And so lawmakers have to be careful, but this is an election year, and lawmakers generally don't want to vote for taxes. They like to vote against taxes, especially during an election year when their name's on the ballot.
Are there any benefits to this bill?
If the state can do it and balance the budget, and not only balance it this year, but in future years, sure. But there may be other ways to massage the budget, and we'll find out, because there are other bills that address tax cuts as well, and there's some that would actually increase taxes. So you got to find the money from somewhere, and you can't just keep doing tax cuts and expect to find prosperity. At some point, there has to be a balance.
Right. I was just about to say that, a balance. So earlier you were talking about, finding a way to offset some of the loss that this bill would give us, but this was a companion bill. It came with another one that would eliminate the quality jobs tax credit, which, for those who don't know, it's kind of like a partial refund for corporate businesses. And it's supposed to offset, I think, about 40%. Is that enough to keep us afloat and keep us from having to raise taxes?
Well, that covers $4 for every 10, but also that money is used to stimulate jobs and to give people work. And right now we have historically high employment. So we feel that we've got the opportunity to eliminate something that encourages employment. But will that always be the case? We know that there are ebbs and flows and cycles, and this may not be the same situation 5 years from now or 3 years from now. So lawmakers, I think, have to be careful about how they pull out their knives and cut the budget and massage it, because every year is an adventure, and every year is different from the preceding year, and next year, even 2024, could be significantly different than 2023.
All right, so let's move on from this lawmaker's cuts. This was Senator Brett Elaine that wants to impose these cuts. So let's move on to another one. On Monday, the House voted for an annual $9.2 million cut by 2025, and this would be for the energy industry, and an annual $72 million cut. That's what it would grow to by 2032. So what are the pros and cons of this particular bill? And well, I want you to answer this one. I have a good follow-up.
Well, the energy industry is still significant in Louisiana. As far as dollars and cents, it's the biggest one in our state. And so obviously we want the energy industry to do well, but at the same time, cuts may mean more of a burden for ratepayers and people who do not benefit as much as the industry itself, at least not in a tangible way based on a significant cut. So there has to be some concern about what is this going to do to the average person. And the energy industry, as we know, already gets substantial tax breaks in Louisiana, and it gets more tax breaks than any other industry as well. So it's not like we have closed our back to turned our back to the energy industry because we do a lot to keep it afloat and to make it successful.
So you were talking about how this is going to affect the average person. I mean, Entergy and Demco, places like this, these energy companies have been in the news for a while now because people have been complaining about their rates going up. We've had all these hurricanes. If they get these tax cuts, is it likely that we could see people's bills lower?
Not likely, because there is some significant infrastructure cost, and the statement from the industry is that we need these funds to be able to keep us modern and safe, and we have to do this to be in compliance and make sure that we aren't having the lights go out at wrong times and the grid not working as it should. So as a result, I think we have to take that into account, but the average ratepayer is not going to see a decrease in their bills. That's just very unlikely to happen.
All right, so these are pretty much all of my questions. Is there anything else you think the people should know about what's going on in session this week?
Well, I think they may tinker with the sales tax as well. And we have the highest sales tax in America, and that is something that would help consumers if it were to go down. And it's already in the statute to go down in a few years, but it may be done incrementally, which would mean some tax cuts that would benefit everybody, in particular those at lower income. And as we know, we have, as a comparison to other states, one of the poorest states in America. So that's something lawmakers will look at, but whether a highly conservative legislature will side with low-income people over industry is suspect, shall we say.
All right, so it's always fun to talk about taxes, tax cuts, all of these things. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kara.